Hello and welcome to today's LOL Esports Round Up. We're going to cover the games from the LCS last night, the LPL and LCK games from earlier today, and the LEC games that just finished up. Tomorrow we will preview the LPL, we will be previewing the LPL, LCK, and LEC series that are scheduled for tomorrow. Predictions, I believe I'm 224 and 113. I know that says 111, but I believe I'm 113 now. LCS, Immortals NRG start us off. This will be speed run. Immortals finish the split 5 and 13. NRG 9 and 9 as Immortals win. Balulu was MVP on Azir, 838, 31% of damage. Kenvi 028 in the loss. Palafox 822, 31% of damage in the loss. Sorry, Kenvi won. Jesus Christ. Obviously, Balulu won. Kenvi won. Balulu got MVP for mid to late game performance pretty much once the Azir scaled and they got into a good position. He and Solo on the Rumble were able to lay down quite a bit of damage, and NRG had no answer despite getting to an early lead. They could not hold on to it. As far as the bot lane's concerned, I thought NRG had the edge early on, but couldn't keep it. They're going into the split on a losing streak. And that's kind of, actually, I think they beat Cloud9 the day before, didn't they? Not quite as hot as they were doing a couple weeks ago, though. EG, TSM, EG finished 12 and 6 as they win. TSM 8 and 10. TSM, the wheels are falling off. Jojo Pune 615, 50% of damage on Tristana, clearly MVP. Shaden 0111 on Ivern. Insanity 461, 31% of damage on Jace in the loss. Once again, Insanity leads TSM in damage in a loss. It just has happened, I think, quite a few times this split. Honestly, out of their 10 games, I'd argue half of those have been Insanity leading the way. Unfortunate for him. EG, this was close. And then, similar to the other game that we just went over with Immortals NRG, mid to late game, Jojo starts laying down the damage. He is unstoppable, jumping into team fights, and just changing the whole way the game looks, honestly. And frankly, even if a part of me was like, hey, Revenge solo killed Haunter in the early game. Revenge did okay in this game. Should he be MVP? Not when Jojo has literally half of the damage. Unforgiven also looked good, but it didn't make a difference because, the most valuable player is definitely the one with half the damage for the entire team. 100 Thieves, Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians win to go to 13 and 5. 100 Thieves 7 and 11. Stixay was MVP, 526, 32% of damage. Huhi 1112 on Leona. Quid 339, 37% of damage. I forget if it was Azir or Jace because 100 Thieves played twice. So Stixay jumping in. I think he was on a Kesa on this one. Yeah, I believe he was on a Kesa. Just going into team fights, dive bombing pretty much, how Kesas do. And changing, being able to carry that way. I thought Gory looked good, better than Quid. River setting a pace that closers struggle to keep up with. Licorice also affecting team fights as well. 100 Thieves going into it are not, going to the playoffs are not quite as good as I'd like them to be, especially with Quid. I would like Quid to be in a better place, in development-wise. Obviously, dealing 37% of the damage, he is doing his job in that regard, but I would like the team to be able to take advantage of his abilities a bit more. Doublelift looking good. In some moments, I think he had a triple kill in this one. It's either this game or that game. Regardless, he had only 3 kills in that game, so I'd like to think it was this one. Otherwise, though, I thought that, Doublelift, Busio weren't doing enough. TL, Dignitas, TL win. They're 10 and 8, 10 the split. Dig were 7 and 11. APA was MVP on Ziggs, going 4 to 11, 40% of damage. Eon 706 on Tristana. Jensen 6-1 and 2, 34% of damage on Azir. Summer Jensen coming through, but not enough for Dignitas in this one. Really, it's something because you watch the game, and Summit looked really good on the Ornn. Definitely had an MVP level performance. I thought Pioshik looked good on Lee Sin. Core JJ had some moments on the Nautilus. But in the end, it's APA laying down all this damage on Ziggs. It's actually the difference maker in these team fights taking turrets with Ziggs. It's one of his better champions. And, you know, I don't like Ziggs AD carry, but Ziggs mid is a valid pick. Yeon, in the late game, similar to JoJo in the previous game that we talked about a couple of games ago, Tristana coming on strong in the end game, but by that point it was pretty TL favored, and I felt like APA was the reason why. Cloud9 FlyQuest, Cloud9 win. Blabber was MVP on Sejuani. They go to 13-5. Fly finished the split 5-13. Eminez 316, 35% of damage. Sven 208. I think Eminez was on Tristana. Invicla 131, 38% of damage in the loss on Silas. Vikla actually solo killed Eminez in the early game in this one. But Blabber was setting everything up on Sejuani. He was all over the place. Spica unable to keep up. And then even in the mid to late game, he was setting things up pretty well to just continue to control the lead and control the game. Playing facilitator. C9 showed us both versions of themselves today. In this one, Blabber playing Sejuani, and then the other one, the complete opposite of Sejuani when it comes to the way the team looks. FlyQuest, biggest disappointment of the year. One of the biggest. Them and Vitality have been just absolutely, mind-numbingly disappointing when it comes to their results. We had two tiebreakers. Dignitas 100 Thieves for 7th, 8th place. Dig would win. Jensen 609, 33% of damage on Jace. Tomo 608 on Kesa was MVP. Doublift 332, 35% of damage in the loss. I believe on a Sivir. Just didn't have it. Once again. Dignitas played more competitively against TL than 100 Thieves against Golden Guardians, so it's not a shock to me that Dig actually did win this one. Dig had just beaten them the day before as well. Poom looked good. I believe he was on a Blitzcrank, finding some pretty good hooks at times. Rich on the Fiora, changing the team fights a bit. KR Fiora is going to do that. And, I felt like 100 Thieves going in limping into the playoffs here. Dignitas feeling themselves after a couple decent weeks where they've probably overperformed. And the carries showed up. 12-0-17. I would say that is more than showing up for Dignitas. The final tiebreaker was Cloud9 Golden Guardians for first place. Blabber was my MVP on Kindred. Eminez 2-1-11, 34% of damage. Sven 0-0-14. So Sven goes 2-0-22 yesterday. Gory 3-3-0, 44% of damage in the loss. You can't do much more than that, right? 40% of the damage. You can only do so much. Cloud9 opened up a gold lead, I think, in this one in a vacuum. If I recall, this game was very low kills, and Cloud9 had like a 2.5, 3K gold lead just naturally. And that's not going to cut it. If you're Golden Guardians, you need to be able to match in lane so you don't end up in a hole. In team fights, Blabber's Kindred, well-timed ultis. A key fight in the mid-game, he had a double kill and also executed his ulti well. And that was what turned the game and gave C9 an advantage, and they would go with it after that. Because it was a slow game, that mid-game team fight was the difference maker. LCK, KT, Gen G. KT win 2-0. They're now 13-1. Gen G 13-1, and that gives KT first seed right now in the LCK. Aiming 10-0-13, 30% of damage. BDD 11-2-13 was MVP. Chovy 4-5-5, 36% of damage in the loss. So BDD played Azir and Jace. I thought, it's tough. I thought, Aiming really did well in one game. Not as great in the other game, but BDD I felt did really well in both. Keen had some good moments. Lehens, honestly, I thought game 2 he might have been MVP on the Alistar. He had some really well-timed CC and team fights, but the Lulu game, it's hard to really, I thought he played very well on the Lulu, but how impactful is the Lulu? That's kind of the thing there. In the end, BDD, I thought, had very good shuffles when he played Azir, and he also dealt a ton of damage on Jace. It was the first time he'd played Jace, actually, in his career in the LCK. I think they said it was his 54th unique champion pick, which is a surprise. All the times Jace mid has been a thing. BDD has never played it, and he looked very good on it. Gen G struggling, though, in this one. And frankly, the last couple series they've struggled, despite winning against, like, KDF. KDF played them tough. You know, I said yesterday, previewing this, I thought Gen G, you know, are a Worlds contender if Chovy can play both ways, and I still believe that. I mean, it's just one series, and they beat KT earlier in the split, and I'm sure they'll play again in the playoffs. But at the same time, it's not good that they need to, you know, get to that Worlds contending stage. Like I said, they have to what did I say yesterday? You know, they have to go in feeling themselves. They offer a lot of different things, this team. And KT play just one style pretty much, and they do it very well. Seeing Jace mid does offer a bit of a different wrinkle to things, but at the same time, you know, it is what it is. Nongshim KDF. Nongshim with 2-1, as now they're tied for 6th, if not actually in 6th. With KDF at 4-10. Fiesta was MVP, 10-5-17, 34% of damage. Sylvie, 11-4-12. Dudu, 5-6-12, 29% of damage in the loss. I thought Din was very good in game 1. Solo killed Dudu early on. And then Sylvie really did well on the Viego. However, in game 2, KDF would respond, Dudu doing his job. I thought Taeyun actually looked excellent in game 2. Bulldog, you know, Bulldog, it's either Dudu or Bulldog. One of them shows up in their losses, and Dudu did more work today, obviously getting the mention. But I thought in game 2, Bulldog had some nice things. In game 3, though, Nongshim opened up with a level 1. We do not see many level 1s anymore. I actually am happy that I did see one, because, you know, it's really something where I think teams can even the playing field with and get out to a slight early gold lead, get out of the gate on the right foot. You know, you just don't see many level 1s anymore that are executed to the degree that Nongshim did, and Fiesta was a big part of that on the Annie. And I think Fiesta and the bot lane went up there and actually got that. And then Jiwoo and Peter actually looked good into Taeyun and Andal in game 3, I thought. Honestly, Peter's put together a couple good series in a row. And Jiwoo has looked excellent. Nongshim definitely made the right decision in playing him over Vital. LPL Playoffs, EDG, OMG. EDG win 3-2. Uzi was my MVP. Fofo, 14-9-36, 30% of damage. JJ, 8-7-54. Cream, 22-13-20, 37% of damage, as he really showed up in this one. Obviously not in all 5 games, but more than anybody else. I mean, 37% of damage across 5 games is a lot of the damage. So, really, over the 5 games, Cream was the one that showed up more often than not. I thought Abel on Samira had some moments. Obviously, that is one of his key champions that, you know, are his pocket picks. And after that, I was not impressed. Ezreal game 5, I mean, what the hell? I'm not a big... Ezreal really isn't meta right now, right? And to see them picking in game 5 when the game's on the line, not great. Shanji being played on facilitators. I mean, Malphite, really? I think they won the game on Malphite, but just the idea that OMG went into this series with, just draft-wise, was not hot. 4 melee champion comps and things like that. I understand that's OMG's strong suit. I mean, Cream is best on melee. Shanji is very good on everything. But at the same time, you know, you run into some troubles. I thought in team fights, Uzi really did well. Multiple triple kills. I think multiple quadra kills in this series, which is why I gave him MVP, because he was the difference maker when things came to a head, in game 5 especially, and where Abel didn't show up. I thought Ale, in one of the games, it might have been the Renekton game, he outplayed a 1v2 in top lane. No, that might be somebody else. No, I think it was this series. And, you know, I thought across the 5 games, he showed a couple different ways of playing the game, honestly, from the top lane perspective, a little bit of facilitator. That game where he carried, in my opinion, in the early game. Into Shanji, who I would say is better than him. And, he didn't lose anything. Fofo, I mean, under the radar, dealing as much damage as he was, because honestly, seeing Uzi just get all these kills make you think, oh, Uzi's getting a lot of the damage, but really it wasn't the case. It was Fofo. JJ setting things up well, outpacing Aki, setting the tempo. I thought Mako did a good job, especially in Game 5 on the Maokai. It made me actually consider making him MVP for Game 5. I thought, that's an option that not many teams are showing, is that Maokai can be flexed to support. So EDG win this one. I thought OMG would, but EDG continue to perform. And honestly, I've been saying it all along, the DRX angle is real with EDG, and it would be something to just see them get to Worlds. LEC, Fnatic, Mad Lions. Fnatic win 2-0. Humanoid 22, 8, and 12, 43% of damage. Oscarinin 4-3, 28 was my MVP. Karzi 5-8, 13, 31% of damage. You may say to yourself, why do you have the guy that played Ornn in both games with only 4 kills total? Why'd you make him MVP? Well, Game 1, he solo killed Chasey. Chasey's on Rumble, and he dove the Rumble and killed him. If you get solo killed by an Ornn, that kind of just shows what position you are right now in terms of just like how you're playing the game. Chasey is playing like absolute hot trash. I thought his ultis were on point. And in Game 1, Mad Lions were actually out to an early lead for pretty much the entire game. But Oscarinin was always ahead in his matchup. So, in my opinion, he was what kept them in it. And then he had well-timed ultis. His item distribution was good. And then in Game 2, he stayed on the Ornn, and I thought he did okay. Razork probably more impactful in the early game. Between both games, Razork, I think, was ahead in gold for the majority of the time over Elyoya. In the end, Humanoid was a monster in Game 2, though. I think he had a dozen kills out of those 22 in that one. A quadra kill. Might have had 2 quadras on Jace, to be quite frank. Mad Lions, I mean, they have a bunch of championship points, so their split is not done. But at the same time, these back-to-back best of 3 losses have been ugly. Even some of their wins where Niski led them in damage and stuff like that throughout the summer split. Not a great situation. Chasey playing the way he is. Elyoya struggling into Razork, which is really weird. Definitely not great out of Mad Lions. And Hilly, I mean, flip a coin and sometimes this will happen. Koi and Heretics, I don't have the damage up here because that series just ended. Flackett was my MVP as Heretics win 2-0. He went 13-1-7. Vethio 12-4-12. This does not include a final kill. So, I mean, it is possible that Vethio is 12-4-13 and Flackett 14-1-7. Larson 6-7-7 in the loss. Game 1 was close. Sisgenda was doing very well into Evi. Actually, Koi were out to quite a lead, but they would throw a key team fight in the late game where Evi actually came through on Renekton. Yankos did very well, and he might have been on Viego in that fight. And Flackett doing excellent. I thought Flackett and Mursa actually in team fights, I mean, honestly, you could have picked Mursa as MVP. I thought his Rel in both games. Very well-timed engages. I think he went 0-4 and like 43 in this series. Like, not dying much for a facilitator. Engage support is pretty impressive. And not only that, I thought that his engages, like I said, were well-timed. Kept them, well, didn't even keep them, that brought them back. That gave them good setup in their team fights to win. And then in Game 2, honestly, Koi just didn't show up. Heretics were simply better. Top lane, once again, Sisgenda had a little bit of an edge. But Heretics were just on another level. Vethio performing, Flackett performing, Mercer. I mean, Koi did not have much. Comp is not the same without Trimby. Larson had one really good Ori ulti that Sisgenda followed up on with Gnar in Game 2, and I thought that would be a turning point in that game, but there was just nothing out of Comp. It's like, was Comp even there? I probably could watch the replay and see if he was or not, but it felt like he wasn't even there, because if he had shown up with some damage, that could have been a turning point for Koi to be able to win that team fight and maybe be able to win that game. And it just wasn't the case, where Heretics players showed up in those moments. And, Heretics and Fnatic move on. So, sneak peek for tomorrow. LCK, T1, and Breon. T1 are 14th in the power rankings, 7-6, coming off of a loss to HLE. Breon 3-10, coming off of a loss to D+. Last time they played, T1 would win 2-0. Gumiyushi went 9-1-9, 33% of damage in the win. Henna 1-4-4, 30% of damage in the loss. Sandbox DRX, Sandbox went 3-10, Sandbox are 3-10, and DRX are as well. Sandbox coming off of a loss to HLE, DRX a loss against Nongshin. Last time they played, DRX won 2-1. Fate, Paddock, and Barrel went 26, 26, and 86, with 1,685 DPM in the win, 68% of damage. Closer, Teddy, and Kale would go 31, 31, and 56 for 1,358 DPM, so roughly 330 DPM less, and 64% of the damage. It makes sense. Best of three-game series. That this would be pretty close. LPL Playoffs, Nip and Weibo. Nip are 7-9. Weibo 7th in the power rankings at 10-6. When they played in summer, Weibo would win 2-0. The Shy led Weibo in damage, going 7-4-4, 31%. And Invincible led Nip in damage, going 2-7-2 with 34% of damage. So we'll see if the top lane, once again, heavy damage dealers tomorrow morning, or if it's going to be a different vibe. LEC, we have SK and Fnatic. They just played last week. SK are 4-5, Fnatic 7-2. SK won 2-0 when they played. Irrelevant went 9-4-8, 37% of damage in the win. Oscarinin 3-3-3, 17% of damage in the loss. Obviously, two very different vibes to that one. Oscarinin, more facilitator in terms of the damage dealt. Maybe he wasn't on a facilitator, didn't really look back at the drafts, but the damage output was representative of one, whereas Irrelevant, more carry-oriented. BDS Heretics, BDS 4-5, Heretics 5-4. When they played last week, BDS won 2-1. Nuke went 16-3-15 for 34% of damage. Vatio 14-6-6, 32% of damage and loss. If I recall, Vatio was the main, consistent threat from Heretics in that one. So I expect that one to be, these are going to be interesting because Fnatic haven't beaten SK, I think, all year. And BDS and Heretics are pretty close. So that's it for the roundup. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, like it. Subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. Follow me on Twitter. Join the Discord. Become a YouTube supporter. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.